It has been 31 years since the first Sonic game has been released. At that time, games didn't have the technology they do nowadays and were released on consoles that are no longer sold or produced. That's where emulators come in. They are crucial for game preservation and allow us to still play those old games till this day. With the size of the Sonic franchise, there is a big interest in preserving those same old games. And today, I will talk about the state of emulation and gameplay experience of Sonic games. I won't talk about any weird spin-offs like Good Friend Chao or Sonic Bowling. I'll only show the mainline games and some of the main spin-offs. I also want to make clear that the emulators shown in this video don't promote or condone piracy, as neither do I. The purpose of emulation is to preserve old games and keep them alive through time, and I'm only showing how well they have been / are being preserved, so don't take this as an incentive for piracy. I will also be briefly covering some differences between the different console releases of some of these games. Let's start by covering these games by order of release, which would leave us with the Mega Drive / Genesis, Game Gear and Master System games. The games released for these consoles were Sonic 1, 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic CD, Sonic Chaos, Sonic Triple Trouble, Knuckles Chaotix and Sonic Blast. All of these games run as you would expect. They are very stable and run pretty much exactly as they did on original hardware, with the added bonus of some tweaks you can make, such as adding shaders. There isn't much to add to this section. Next would be the Sega Saturn games. There aren't many Sonic games for this console, just Sonic 3D Blast, which also released on the Mega Drive but is worse there, Sonic R and Sonic Jam. Like the Mega Drive games, all of these run pretty much the same as they did on the Saturn. Keep in mind that Saturn emulators don't have the best compatibility even to this day, since the original console was a very complex system. Again, I don't have much to add to this section, as there aren't really any big differences from the original hardware, nor enhancements you can make to improve your experience. And next are the Dreamcast games. There really only were 3 Sonic games for the Dreamcast: Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Shuffle. Again, they run exactly as they did on original hardware, except that in the emulator you have a ton of enhancements, such as increasing the internal resolution, resulting in a clearer image, widescreen, anisotropic filtering, texture upscaling and many more features. Here is where you can actually get a better experience, graphically at least, from the emulators than on original hardware. And next are the GameCube, PS2 and Xbox games. From this generation, there were 2 games exclusive to the GameCube, Sonic Adventure DX and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. They are pretty much the same Dreamcast game, but with some enhancements, such as a higher and more stable frame rate, better textures and added features. New releases are Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog, both released to all 3 consoles. In real hardware, Sonic Heroes ran fine and much better on the GameCube and the Xbox than in the PS2. The PS2 version was the weakest of the 3, with downscaled textures, a worse color palette, worse frame rate, worse sound quality, a worse experience overall. The same still kinda applies to the emulators. In a PS2 emulator, you can increase the internal resolution, but that's the only thing it has going for it really, since you can't do anything about the frame rate or the worse audio quality, especially when both the Dolphin and Zemu emulators have more and better features to improve the experience. You can also increase their internal resolution, but you can also add anti-aliasing, anisotropic filtering, post-processing effects, true widescreen via codes in the Dolphin emulator, and much more. I'm not saying the PS2 emulator is bad, I'm saying that Sonic Heroes for the PS2 is much worse compared to the other versions, even when running on an emulator. Apart from that, the Xbox and GameCube versions work very well and run very smoothly, although I would recommend the GameCube version better because it's easier to set up. Shadow the Hedgehog is almost the same as Sonic Heroes. Graphically, it looks the same between all 3 versions, but the PS2 version is still the worst since it's locked to 30 FPS. It runs basically the same as Sonic Heroes in Zemu and Dolphin, but I would still recommend Dolphin for ease of setup. Next, I wanted to cover Sonic Riders. Although a spin-off, it's still relevant to cover since it's a very popular game in the franchise. The game runs pretty much the same on all three versions, but once again, the PS2 version is the worst graphically, with worse textures and barely any reflections. The Xbox and GameCube versions are pretty much the same, but once again, it's easier to set up on Dolphin than in Zemu. Now let's quickly cover some exclusive handheld games. All of the Sonic Advance games run well, pretty much as you would expect really. Sonic Rush and Sonic Rush Adventure run very well as well, with some enhancements that you can use to further improve your experience. And Sonic Rivals 1 and 2 run very well too, and look very good with some graphical tweaks on top. Now let's get into the PS3 and Xbox 360 releases, with some Wii releases as well. Let's start by Sonic 06. Here is where it gets interesting. Both versions run pretty much the same if you have a powerful enough computer. The Xenia emulator is much easier to set up and has better compatibility, with no patches needed, constant 60 FPS if you have powerful enough hardware, more stable gameplay than the PS3 version, better shadows and blur but has a higher GPU demand. RPCS 3 will need patches and a custom build to be able to hit constant 60 FPS. Personally, I find it better to play on Xenia since it's much easier to set up and usually runs better than RPCS 3, especially if you don't have a great CPU. The only issue on RPCS 3 that doesn't really happen on Xenia is long loading times, which are present on both PS3 and the 360, but Xenia fixes them. There are some great comparisons on YouTube between the two versions if you wish to see it for yourself. Next would be Sonic and the Secret Rings. Since the game uses the Wiimote, setting it up on Dolphin can be quite awkward, but once you have configured it to your liking, I think it can be quite enjoyable, better than the original Wii experience even. Since you can increase the resolution and more, you will get a much better result graphically and a less tiring and frustrating experience. You might even start to like it if you didn't. And next is the game you've all been waiting for. The fans have been asking Sega to port it to PC, which even resulted in fans trying to recreate the game themselves via different engines or mods. Of course, I'm talking about Sonic Pocket Adventure for the Neo Geo Pocket. It runs well, I guess. It's Sonic Pocket Adventure. Why would you even want to play this? Now for real, let's cover Sonic Unleashed. The HD version of the game was released for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, while the SD version was released for the PS2 and the Wii. The two versions are basically completely different games. I'll cover the SD version first, since there isn't much to say about it. It's the standard that the PS2 version is the worst out of the bunch, although it looks very impressive for the system. The Wii version has better models, textures, sound quality, extra special effects and much more. The Wii version is easier to set up this time, since you can use an actual controller with it in the original Wii version. Both versions run well regardless. Now let's get to what you've all been waiting for. Sonic Unleashed for the PS3 and the 360 has been historically a very highly demanding game in the original hardware, which has proven itself to be a challenge for emulation as well. In recent times, huge breakthroughs have been made in an effort to optimize its emulation. For starters, in both RPCS 3 and Xenia, the game looks basically the same. The big difference is performance. Sonic Unleashed runs much better on Xenia than it does on RPCS 3. RPCS 3's performance is quite similar to the PS3 if you don't have a very high-end CPU. Xenia is more GPU demanding, which means most people might have an easier time running the Xenia version. The big problem with Xenia is the stability. While RPCS 3 might run worse for you, it will very rarely crash, if even at all. Xenia, on the other hand, is a mixed bag. You might play for hours without any crashes, then get into a hub world and immediately crash. Stages are usually quite stable, especially the daytime stages, but some hub worlds might instantly crash your game. Since Xenia runs much better for me, I will recommend it any day over RPCS 3, since I can bear with the crashes. For people who can't or have a better computer than I do, you can try emulating it on RPCS 3 as you might have a better experience with it. Over the last few weeks, a lot of optimizations and stability improvements have been made to the Xenia Canary releases, which have improved the Sonic Unleashed experience on Xenia. The future looks bright for it, and we might actually have Sonic Unleashed stable and running well on the PC very soon. And speaking of another PS2/Wii game, let's quickly check Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. I don't really have to say it at this point. The Wii version beats the PS2 in any category. Textures, details, supports widescreen, etc. They both run well on each's respective emulators, but the Wii version would be the best to emulate. I'll quickly cover Sonic Free Riders 2. There isn't much to say about it other than the fact that you can't play it, since Xenia doesn't support Kinect and doesn't let you configure Kinect commands to a controller. The last exclusive Wii game is Sonic and the Black Knight. It suffers the same problem as Secret Rings, that is having to configure the Wiimote controls for a normal controller, but I think that, compared to the original experience, this one is 1,000 times better. I didn't like this game much playing on the Wii, but playing it on Dolphin with the comfort of a normal controller is where it really shines. I would really recommend trying this one. The same goes for Sonic Colors. You can play it on the Wii with a regular controller, sure, but playing on the emulator 60fps 4K widescreen, it's really something else. You can clearly see the more recent we go, the better it gets to play this type of games on an emulator. If you didn't like the original Sonic Colors on the Wii, give it a try on Dolphin. There is also Sonic Colors for the DS, which also runs pretty well, as did Sonic Rush and Sonic Rush Adventure. And next are 3 games we don't usually talk about: Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, Fire and Ice and Shattered Crystal. Rise of Lyric runs surprisingly well. I would go as far as saying it runs better on the emulator than it did on the Wii U. The game is still Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, don't get me wrong, but I think this is the best way to play it, especially when you can make it a higher resolution with better texture quality while sacrificing very little performance. The other 2 games released only on the 3DS and run fine too, nothing much to add. You can add some graphical tweaks, not much else going for them really. And I think that's most of the games covered really. There are other weird ass spin-offs that I could cover, but I don't think it makes much sense to do so. I will remind you again that the purpose of the video is to show how well the games have been/are being preserved, not to incentivize any type of piracy. All these teams have done in an effort to preserve games through many generations is incredible, and I will leave a link to all of the software I have used throughout the video in the description. This type of video is a filler of sorts until I release the Sonic Unleashed bonus video in a few months. And if you've got any suggestion for a video, let me know in the comments.